Hi guys, glad to see everybody's back, as if I knew, right? Today what we're going to do is finally attach this top to the table. And we're going to do it exactly the way you guys will do it. I'll try to be as meticulous as I can with my instruction. It's a little complicated, but it's one of those things that you could definitely work out. It's one of those things that if you just think about it, it's actually pretty clear. Here's the story. This is my top. This is the top that I routed the other day. I didn't sand it up, like I said, as well as you guys will. I didn't sand the legs. I didn't sand, tell you the truth, anything. But I'm going to pretend that this is as good as the way you guys are working on your project. Here's number one. The first thing that I want to do is I want to look at the outside of my legs. I want to put a mark smack dab in the center of the leg, because what I'm going to do is drill a hole right in the center of the leg, and I'm going to attach a dowel pin. These dowel pins are going to go on the top of each one of these legs. They're going to stick out, actually drill a hole on the underside of the top, and that's how the thing will be actually mounted after we glue it together. To do that, I'm going to pretend that there's a finish on this, as well as you guys finished your project. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line smack dab in the center of each one of these legs. To do that, because you guys already have a finish on your project, I'm going to put a little piece of masking tape right on the top end of that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mark with my pencil right on the tape. The reason, of course, why I'm doing that is so that I don't mark the leg. The other thing that you'll find out is that with your project finished, whether it's been polyurethane, whether it's been painted, whether it's been stained, it's very, very difficult to see a pencil line on something that has a finish on it. Even if it's just straight polyurethane, if you put a mark on polyurethane, it's rare that you're going to be able to see it, because that polyurethane prevents the pencil from leaving its lead mark on there. So what I've done is I've just marked each one of these legs with a little center point right there. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to take a walk over to the old tool cabinet. I want to get what's called a self-centering doweling jig, which is going to be on the left-hand side of the tool cabinet. So let me just run over there and get it. Back. Pretty quick, huh? You know, the other day, I laid down on the floor to go to sleep, and I noticed that the light was left on in my living room. So what did I do? I had to get up and shut the light off. Well, I'm so quick that I got up, went over there, turned the light switch off, and I was on that floor in bed sleeping by the time it got dark in that room. Yes, that's how quick I am. Oh, yes. Take a look at a self-centering doweling jig. I'm sure you've seen them climb up the left-hand side of the tool cabinet. The thing that I want to mention to you about this self-centering doweling jig is that there's a bunch of holes on the top that correspond to a bunch of white lines on the inside. If you look at that second white line right there, that lines up with a 3/8 hole. That's the size hole that these dowel pins are. So when I drill my hole, I want to use the second white line that lines up with the 3/8 dowel pin. The other way that you can make sure you don't make a mistake is that in the corded yellow drill, there is always a 3/8 drill bit in. If I take the 3/8 drill bit and I place it in this hole, it's way too loose. Same thing, way too loose. If I put it in this hole, way too small, it only fits into one of those holes, and that's the 3/8 hole. And you could clearly see that that's the one that's most used.
It's like Goldilocks.
Just like Goldilocks, yeah, exactly. If I look at my line that is on that self-centering doweling jig, I'm going to take this and make sure that this lines up exactly to the line that I drew. Now the question is, does my pencil line that I drew line up with the mark on the self-centering doweling jig? Oh, now I can see. Let's see how close I was. I wasn't too bad. I'm going to make sure this lines up exactly even, pencil mark to self-centering doweling jig mark, and I'm going to tighten this down. The question is, which direction do I tighten? And it's always clockwise. The next thing that I'm going to do is drill a hole, but I'm going to let gravity work for me. I'll double check this. Yep, that lines up pretty well. Oops, nope, it's off a little bit. Let me make sure I'm accurate. I have to be accurate right there. And I'm going to tighten this down pretty well. I'm going to let gravity work for me. If I put it on top of the table, what you find out is that you're drilling this way as opposed to letting gravity work for you, let the force be with you and go down with the table already on the ground. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill this hole. So I put the 3/8 drill bit in. Oop, let me move my tag. And I'm just going to drill down right till it hits that collar. Just till it hits the collar. Oh boy. Hold on. Hold on. Let me see if I can't make this happen. Let's see if I can't make this happen. Let's see. A few more push-ups. Maybe safety glasses on. Let's see if it works. Oh, wow. So all you have to do is a few push-ups. Common mistake. I mentioned to you guys about this little pin. If the pin is moved towards my right-hand side, the drill is spinning counterclockwise. You could stay here until the cows come home and you will not drill that hole. So what you always want to make sure is that the pin is towards your left, which means that when that drill is spinning, it's spinning clockwise, and it will drill that hole effortlessly. To take the self-centering dowling jig off, I want to make sure I turn it, counterclockwise. Stay with it, stay with it. Oh, wow. How do you like that? It comes off. Tremendous. So there's my hole that lines up with my pencil line. I'm going to do the same thing around each one of these other legs. Same thing, I need 2 pair of glasses. I know you don't. I'm going to lay this directly on top of my leg. Tighten down the self-centering dowling jig. The other thing that you guys want to keep in mind, just want to be accurate here when I do this. It's easy for you to push down on this side of the dowling jig. What you want to do is make sure that when you're drilling, you push down on that short side of the dowling jig, which will make sure that it will stay flat on the leg. Also remember that that drill bit is very, very hot. Once you drill a hole through that, it's going through sometimes hardwood, and it becomes an issue where the heat of that drill bit is touched by your skin, and then you're going to tell me it burned you. Yes. Leg number 3, pressure on this short side, drill down. That took about 3 seconds, no, 2.5 seconds. Last one, self-centering dowling jig, lining it up, tightening it down. Watch it, cameraman, watch it, watch it. This is what I was saying. If I drill a hole this way, I'm not letting gravity work for me. It's a royal pain in the can. So I'll take the table, put it down, and let gravity work for me. The next thing I'm going to do is real quickly take the table, I flip it over, tap off any sawdust that's inside the holes. The next thing I want to do is I want to place my pins actually in the holes. So to do this, and this is actually a pretty easy thing, but it can be a little complicated, I want to put 1 little drop of glue on each one of those. You notice that when I put a drop in, it is a short drop. The last thing you want to do is take the glue and, just like at Costco when you're getting gas, fill it up. Because if you fill up that hole with glue, it's going nowhere when you put a dowel pin in. I'm going to take this little hammer or mallet. I want to tap it down. Please listen. Goes down, goes down. Right there, it's solid. Once it's solid, don't keep hitting it. People have done that in the past. If you keep hitting that, I guarantee you will crack the leg. That little dowel pin will work as a wedge and it will split the leg. So what you want to do is tap it down just until you hear it solid. Right there, it's not going any further. I'll do the same on this leg. Tap it down, listen. Solid. And last one. Solid. If I keep hitting that, I will split that leg, guarantee it. The other thing I want to do is just check to see that I don't have any glue on the top of the legs. I'll just kind of wipe that off with my finger, and I can wipe it on the end.
How much left? There you go.
Thank you, cameraman. Now I've got an issue. If I look at these dowel pins, they look like they're sticking up a heck of a lot further than the thickness of my tabletop. So what I want to do now is I want to cut these down. I want to cut them about 3/8 of an inch, which is about half the thickness of my wood. In order to do that, what I have to do is actually measure from the end of this leg up 3/8 of an inch. Now, if you have a half a brain in your head, you probably know that 3/8 of an inch is right about there. And after you've been doing it for 40 years, you kind of guess that that's about 3/8 of an inch, but I got an easier way to do this. I have to cut this on all 4 legs, and I always found out that if I have to do things more than once and it has to be exactly the same, I want to try to figure out a better way to do it in a more accurate way. What I did before this whole lesson started was I went over to the table saw. I anticipated that I was going to have to mark this and cut these 3/8 of an inch high. So what did I do? At the table saw, I set the fence at 3/8 of an inch. I took a piece of scrap wood, and what I actually did was cut this to 3/8 of an inch wide, which means I can use this as a guide. I can take this little piece of wood, put it up against here, and I can cut these dowel pins so they'll be exactly 3/8 of an inch deep, which means, or they'll be sticking out 3/8 of an inch deep, so that when I drill my 3/8 hole in my top, everything goes together well. To do that, to cut these dowel pins off, I'm going to take a walk over to the tool cabinet, watch cameraman, and I'm going to get out my Japanese saw. And we'll take a walk over here. I'm going to grab a stool and show you the easiest way to do this. If you've ever seen me do this before, you know that this is one procedure that scares me. Because no matter how many times I describe it, I always seem to be cut by this saw. This Japanese saw has large teeth on one side, finer teeth on the other. We're going to use the finer tooth side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the saw, place my little template stick flat down on the top of the leg. If you look at that, the end of the leg, I'm going to keep it right there. And then what I'm going to do is take the smaller tooth side, lay this exactly even so it's resting on my 3/8 template, and just go across. I don't want to struggle with it. I just want to take my time. Sometimes what will happen is the leg or the table will move. So what I'll do is I'll wrap my legs around the table. Oops. I'll wrap my legs around the table so it doesn't move. Let's see if I can do that here. Up, up, up. And I'll complete the task. The part that's scary to me whenever I get to the end of this, the wood becomes a higher pitched sound, which is telling me this is going to come off. Oh, I hate this. I never know when it's going to come off. See how it came out real fast? If your hand happens to be in there, you're gonna get cut by that. So it's one of those things that's always very scary to me. When I do this, I never angle the saw. I always try to keep it as flat as I possibly can as I go across there. If I angle it down, that's no good. Try to keep it as flat as you can as you go across there. And that's what usually happens. I usually cut my hand. I'm gonna get a shorter stool. And I'll cut the other three. Smaller side. Just want to show you something, just by fooling around, take a look. Every single time, it's like my initiation. I always cut myself whenever I'm doing this operation. I'm fine in the beginning, but this saw is super sharp. Ah! Last one. And again, try to keep the saw nice and flat. Ah! I'm done. If you have any of these that are a little bit higher than any others, I could take this over to the disc sander and just flatten this out. Looks like this one's a little bit higher, so I'm just gonna flatten this out. Hold on. Yes. Come on. If I look at these three dowel pins, they look pretty good. This one looks like it's sticking up a little bit. So I'll just come over to the disc sander and just flatten it out. Of course, you're always working off the left-hand side. The saw mark makes this a little uneven, so I just want to flatten these out as well. Just touch it. This one is the one that looks a little bit higher. Take that down a little bit more, and I'm all set. These look all about even. Now to attach it. Oops, that is already stopped. It just takes a while for it to slow down. Bop, 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 bop. The next thing I'm going to do is take my tabletop. This is the good side. I'm going to put my good side face down, but I always put it on something, whether it's a cloth, whether it's a magazine, whether it's some papers. I always want to make sure that this is on here so it's flat, never on the table, because on the table, of course, you know, dirt bags put nails into the table, and that's how people's projects get ruined. I'm going to take the table, dowel pins, which are the top, I'm going to flip this over. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this by eye. So if I look on this side, I want to have the same amount of space here as I have over here, and then the same amount of space here as I have over here. So let me do the side first. I'm just going to slide this over, and people say to me, should I measure it? I think that you're probably more accurate just doing this by eye. So I look, I have about a ½ inch there, about a ½ inch there. That's about a ½ inch, that's about a ½ inch. So that looks pretty good. People ask me, should I take the masking tape off? You actually don't need the masking tape except for one, and I'll show you about that. Right here, this is centered side to side. And now let's try it end to end. So if I look over here, I have maybe about 3/4 of an inch, less. So I'm gonna slide it over this way. That's about a half. That's about a half. That's about a half. Let me see if it's moved in the other direction. Still about a half. Still about a half. Right there, that looks pretty well centered. And I'm doing that by eye. And you could kind of tell. I mean, everybody in here is always critical when they come to measuring, but I think you're probably smarter if you just do it by eye and trust your senses. The next thing that I want to do is the most important thing, because this is actually going to register this top to stay exactly in that spot. The first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a piece of tape, I'm gonna put it on the end of this leg, the bottom end. The other thing I'm gonna do on each leg is I'm gonna sight down the surface of this leg. So I'm actually looking down from the top, I'm sighting this down, and I'm gonna put the edge of the masking tape so it lines up with the outside surface of the leg. Now, if you want to, you can take the masking tape off on the bottom or the top side of the leg. But if you take a look at this surface here lines up with the edge of the masking tape. The other thing is that I put a register piece up here. Watch what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put an O here, and I'm gonna put an O on that piece of masking tape. Those two pieces will be the last piece of masking tape that comes off. Now I can't move this. I can't jar it. I can't move the dowel pins. I can't move the legs. What I'm simply gonna do is spin this. As I spin this, I'm gonna put a piece of registered tape on the top of each one of these legs. I'm sighting down. The hard part is noticing where it's gotta go and clearing my nose, because as I look down, my nose gets in the way. Don't laugh. I hear you laughing at home. I'm gonna use my tape, clear my nose, go over top, perfect. And I'll do it one more time on my last leg. Hey, I'm on my last leg. Oh, that's funny. All right. The next thing that I'm gonna do is, believe it or not, I'm gonna take this whole table and I'm gonna move it off. Keeping in mind that this O has to line up with this O. More masking tape, come on in. If you notice, the edge of the masking tape, well, I better get two pair of glasses on this one. The edge of the masking tape is gonna line up with another piece of masking tape. So the joint here is right there. I'm gonna do the same thing on each one of these. Is this complicated? It makes sense when you start to do it. And it's the easiest way to do this. You see the O? The O has to line up with the O on my leg. I'm lining up the masking tape joint exactly where it was before. So this one has to come over this way. This one has to line up with that surface right there, looks pretty good. This one lines up pretty well. Sight down here, there's the joint, that lines up pretty well. The distance looks about the same, good, good, good. I'm gonna turn this around, let's take a look at this one. This one's not bad, this lines up right to the joint. Now what I'm gonna do is take a pencil. I'll take my pencil and I'm actually gonna trace right on around my dowel pins. I'm gonna do that on all four legs. I'm gonna do it on the inside and I'll do it on the outside. Again, this is where I can't hit the table and move it. If I do that, as they say in the wood shop, you are screwed. I can't move it. They all have to line it up. All right, cameraman. Line this up. Cameraman's getting surly. It's because I have my same shirt on for 2 days in a row. So here are my 4 dowel pins completely outlined. I am all set. The critical one is the O, because that has to line up exactly that way. Next, table comes off. I'm gonna put a dot smack dab in the center, smack dab in the center, smack dab in the center, smack dab in the center. Those are the 4 points that I'm gonna drill my holes. A 3/8 hole, it's gotta be the same diameter as that dowel pin. And to do that, a little trick that I found out that works very well come on with me. A little finishing nail. Instead of drilling a pilot hole, and everybody knows what a pilot hole is about, I'm just gonna take the finishing nail. Again, keep this on something like paper, lay this in place. I'm just gonna tap it down so it's centered right on the exact point that I put my pencil line on, my little dot. And that will prevent the drill bit from wandering. When we start the drill bit in there, the drill bit will stay where I've marked the center of it. It won't slide around, as many of you have found. The next thing that I'm gonna do, over to the old drill press, we'll drill the holes, and then we'll mount it on, and hopefully it lines up. Do you still have time? Come on. The drill bit that's in here is the plug cutter. I cut the plugs for my legs. I hadn't taken that out. So what I want to do is I'll take that out with the assistance of my top. Of course, you remember from the last episode, or 2 episodes, or 3 episodes, or 4 episodes, the old chuck key. The chuck key is going to be used to take the drill bit out. So I take the chuck key with the teeth, insert the pin into the hole of the chuck. I'm turning this counterclockwise. It's tough, but I was able to do it. It will loosen up, and I'm going to take the plug cutter out. The bit that I want to attach now is a 3/8 drill bit, and it's the same diameter as the dowel pins. So I take my 3/8 drill bit. I want to mount it into the chuck, but remember from the last time, it doesn't fit. So I could use the chuck key to loosen it up, or I could simply spin this sleeve, which will allow the chuck to open enough. So I spin the sleeve by hand. I'm going to tighten it down, hold on to it because I don't want the drill bit to fall. Grab my chuck key. I'm going to tighten the chuck down. The next thing that I'll do is I realize, hey, idiot, this isn't going to work. I have to drop the table. I mentioned to you guys before, if you ever need the table drop, make sure you ask me. I'll be more than happy to do it. It weighs 90 pounds. I loosen this up, I'll drop it down a little bit, tighten it. So right now, this tabletop will clear. Just like I did before, I want to take my drill bit, line up the drill bit with the center mark of the hole. You know what? I can't do this accurately unless I have my bifocals on. Oh! Good one, huh? I'm going to line up the drill bit, center of the drill bit, with the point that I made with the nail, and now I'm going to set the depth to how deep. How deep should I drill down into this tabletop? Maybe that should be a question on your exam, or quiz. 3/8 of an inch, half the thickness of this 3/4, is how far I want to set it, but I actually want to go a little bit more just to make sure it's deep enough. The worst thing you could possibly do at this point is drill all the way through that top, because remember, I glued it, I sanded it, I routed it, it's all set, ready to go. The most embarrassing thing that you could do is drill through this top. That's what we don't want to have happen. So what I'll do is line this up, start up the drill press, and I'm going to drill my hole. I don't know, that looks like, oh boy, I wonder if that's too deep. You know what? I don't want to take, no, I think I'm going to say I'm okay. So I set this, and I want to say a little prayer that I didn't come through the other side, and it's still good. So I think I'm in good shape.
Aces.
Woo! I'll line up the next. Some people like to shut this off, and that's okay if you want to be accurate. Some people like to shut off the drill press when they drill the hole. I'll do it just to make you feel like you're not alone. So I go down again until the discs hit the gray area. It automatically stops. It's a little bit greater than 3/8 of an inch. This one I'll just drill from the sense of saving a little bit of time. My last hole. And it's drilled to the depth it has to be. Keep in mind here, that O I said to you is critical because that's the only way we know how this thing is gonna line up with the table. So when I do this, I'm gonna take off every piece of tape beside, or except for, my Ode masking tape. And let's see if we can get a top on this bad boy. My O is still on. The tape comes off. I want to check to see that this is drilled deep enough. So what I want to do is actually take my table. I'm not going to line up all 4 holes. I just want to line up one hole with one hole with one dowel pin. What I want to do is I'm going to tap this down and I want to see if this thing fits in here. What I'm checking to see is that it makes contact with the end of the leg, and it does. So it tells me by that hole that I drilled that this is now drilled deep enough. The very last thing that you can do is line up the O to the O. Where's the O? Come on, baby. Uh-oh, don't tell me I can't find, oh, it's right here. Dodged a bullet there, buddy. I'm gonna put 1 drop of glue in each one of these holes. How could I put in a drop so I don't put in too much? If you remembered, I'm gonna take a screw, a lousy piece of sandpaper or a scrap piece of paper. Uh-oh, that's Hunter Brito's. I better not touch that one. I'll just get a piece of scrap wood, put some glue on a piece of scrap wood, roll the head of the screw on the glue, lay it right over top of the hole that you drilled into the top, and I wipe it off. That way, I'm assured that there is only 1 drop of glue in each one of these holes. And your project has probably been finished on the inside, so you probably have polyurethane on that. The most important thing is that you don't put too much glue in, because just like we mentioned with the dowel pins, if there's too much glue in that hole, it won't allow the dowel pin to go in. So now what I want to do is line up my O to my O. I know this one goes on this side. I want to say a prayer. Okay? And let's see if these holes line up. So I line up that dowel pin. I line up this dowel pin to the hole. I line up that dowel pin to the hole. I line up this dowel pin to the hole. Now, if you're strong enough, you could tap a little bit. If you want, you could take a hammer. And I do it on the end of the lathe. Of course, I'm not going to do it on the shelf. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. I'll slide this around. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. I look flat, 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 flat. O can now come off. O can now come off. Some people say, can I leave it just like this? You can, but if you want, you could actually take a couple of deep throat clamps, lay them on here, but please, if you do that, make sure you take a piece of scrap wood, lay it on top, clamp it down. But there right here, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, I have my finished table. Any questions, comments, problems? Please do me a favor. Try to make sure you remember this stuff or watch this video as a little rehearsal before you put your project together. Any thoughts? You guys have a great evening.